Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Wolfson, the host and founder of Web3 Deep Dive Podcast. Web3 Deep Dive Podcast focuses on real-world Web3 use cases to help you better understand how Web3 is being applied today and how it may be leveraged in the future. If this sounds interesting, I encourage you to subscribe, like, and share the content that you're seeing today to help spread the word about Web3. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Web3 Deep Dive Podcast. I'm so excited for today's guest. Today I'll be speaking with Chris Castig. He is the founder of Console, a Web3 messaging app. He's also a professor at Columbia Business School, and he's also a Forbes contributing writer. In this episode, we're going to be speaking all about Web3, what a Web3 messaging app is, and Web3 curriculum at Columbia, and much more. So let's get started with today's episode. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Hey, glad to be here, Rachel. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for joining me here on the podcast. I'm excited to see you. And Chris, where are you calling in from today, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I'm in New York City.
Nice. Okay. And just background for our listeners, we met originally in Austin, Texas, right, Chris?
Yeah, we did. I've been in Austin the past few years, and a mutual friend introduced us.
Yeah, good times. Cool. So Chris, before we get started with the questions and with today's interview, maybe tell our listeners a little bit about your background, how you got involved in the Web3 space, and what you're doing with Console.
Yeah, I love the podcast that you have and all the guests. And I think the thing I love about it is I think you're bringing together this narrative of what's possible in this. I guess my perspective of Web3 would be this user-owned internet, this evolving the internet so that it supports creators, brands, like every aspect of what we're doing online, just like really just reimagining that. And my journey, into that space and into, what we're calling Web3 right now, began as a musician myself. I started, I was a music major in college, and the hardest thing about playing music is you just want people to listen to it. Even today, it's like distribution it's just like, you just want people to listen to it, right? And to me, I found BitTorrent and Napster and like all of these kind of early ways of sharing, like P2P file sharing. Do you remember this era?
Yeah. Yes, I do remember. I do. I was alive. I'm not that young, Chris. But thanks for the compliment.
Yeah, so it was this time when the only way to get your music was at like a record store or at like even Apple Music. And then all of a sudden you could just share music person to person. That is what drove me to quit music, as a career, I guess, and whatever that means, and become a developer because I really wanted to build tools that could help people connect peer to peer. And as I was doing that around 2008, 2009, as a developer, starting little startups, I came across Bitcoin around that time and learned that oh wow, all of a sudden you could share value, money with someone else, somewhere else in the world without having a third party in the middle. And I definitely don't want to give myself too much credit. At first I thought I was like, this is stupid. I was like, what is this internet money? But the more I looked into it, I could see that original value of where I got excited about music sharing, now about Bitcoin and money. And friends around me were around 2015, 2016, were starting to talk about the ways that could impact social media and content creation. And I would say that's where I really started, going to meetups, developing little projects, and really just started getting into the community around 2015. And that was in New York City. And there was just this excitement around the launch of Ethereum, which was like, what if we created this world computer where essentially people could own their assets and improve the world? So I don't know, I got pulled in as part of that whole squad back in the day. It was really exciting.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that all makes sense. So the whole peer-to-peer aspect of Web3 kind of pulled you in. And let's talk a little bit about Console because you're the founder of a Web3 social media app or messaging app, maybe I should say. And I want to know a little bit more about it.
Love it. Yeah. Console, we started in 2021, so about a year and a half ago. And the main driver for creating Console was seeing all of the really cool tools that people were building in this space. Like anything from, I think using the wallet is actually underappreciated right now for what we're doing in Web3, because right now our wallet, it's generally just used for like accessing your assets right now, like your NFTs and your money assets. But I think the wallet as a technology is actually really powerful, because what you're doing when you have a Web3 wallet is you go through this process that's a little annoying sort of with like the seed phrase, but really what that's doing is it's giving you this like way of owning your username and password for the internet. It's like a passport for all the things that build on top of that. And that combined with owning NFTs, owning like Ethereum, owning Bitcoin, and owning identity with ENS, all of these things around 2021 were like starting to really take off, and there was no way to use any of these things that we were so excited about, and we still are. And people were just on Discord, and people are on Twitter. And on Twitter, they would buy the .eth name, but on Twitter they would just change their profile to .eth, but it wouldn't really do anything. It was just kind of signaling, right? It was like we use the term like PFPs, right? We're just kind of like NFTs that like you were just kind of displaying, but maybe they weren't really like had any utility. And that's kind of where Console came from. It was like, hey, if we're going to build a better internet, if we're going to upgrade all the apps, we want to help build a project that we feel really aligns with the values of Web3 creators, which are, decentralization, open source, working in public, and user-owned data. And so Discord, Telegram, a lot of the apps we were using aren't that, and aren't trying to be that. Discord was made for gamers, and they disbanded and fired their entire Web3 team just this past year. So we're not going to see that innovation from them, and I think that there's like a really bright future if we are able to connect all the pieces of Web3 together. And that's where Console came from. It's like we want to think of it as like your console, like an old gaming console, that you're able to plug and play all the different parts of Web3. And chat's the first part of that, but we have a much bigger vision toward community building and sharing of assets and payments and everything that we can build on top of that.
Okay. This is interesting because, I like the examples that you gave. You mentioned Discord was built for gamers, Telegram, who knows what that was built for, but mine is full of spam and it's horribly annoying to use.
For spammers.
Right. Telegram was built for spammers. And then we're still left with this problem of we don't have a Web3 social app used for messaging. And that's where Console comes in. So let's break this down a little bit for our listeners, Chris. What do we need in a Web3 social media messaging app that Discord is currently lacking and that Telegram is currently lacking? I mean, what is it that Console brings to the table? You mentioned connecting all of these layer ones or blockchain networks. Like, let's talk about this. Let's break it down a bit. Yeah.
So I think a lot of people understand the pain points of our current web apps is that generally, the narrative of what I think all of us in Web3 are trying to create is something better than what we have today. And today we have apps that are owned by a few people, in the case of X, one person. And these apps, because of that, they're very siloed. The data that you have on Twitter, you can't use your Twitter handle to also be your Instagram handle or TikTok handle. Every time you go to a new app, the creators are forced to recreate their community, rebuild trust with all those people, and you often lose. There's this atrophy of moving communities that's really difficult. So at Console, the first step of what we're working on, or what we released, is all around identity and that network effect. When you come to Console, you log on with your wallet, and you can immediately use your .eth name, your ENS name. We don't allow you to upload images of who you are, but you can only use NFTs of things you've collected, right? And so we use this on-chain data in a way to build your identity, your profile. And we're building out profile pages and different ways to showcase your network. So that's the first step, I think. I think identity is the first step in distinguishing, because when you come to Console and you use your ENS name or you chat, you should also be able to bring that name and chat when you go to a Lens app or a Farcaster app or a variety of different apps. That's what portability and interoperability mean. And so it all starts with identity. So that's the first step, I think, that's like a huge game changer. And to be honest, I think when people come to Console, some people, like, you know, we have a few thousand people on the app right now. They come in and they get it. And they just like, they've read the FAQ, they've talked, they've come to our Twitter space, they get it. But not everybody gets it yet. And they say, oh, this just looks kind of the same, you know? And I think that same effect is having place on other social apps right now, apps that I love, you know, like the Warpcaster app and different apps out there. But I think it's because we're still early days. I think it's kind of the same time in 2013 when people were like, Bitcoin, I don't get it. We already have money. What we're going to see over the next few years are just leaps and bounds in what creators are able to do on these platforms. You know, one example of that is, you know, right now, if you're on TikTok, for example, a lot of artists, friends of mine, they'll upload a video to TikTok and then they'll re-upload the same version of that video on Instagram, and then they'll re-upload the same version of that on some other site. And now you have all these different kind of fragmented parts of your identity. And it becomes harder to monetize that. It becomes harder to like move that audience. We're already seeing, you know, different ecosystems like the ones I mentioned, as well as Nostr, where you upload it once to your identity, and then that gets broadcast to all the different apps, no matter where people are. And it's just like a really big fundamental change when you see this yourself. And so that's what's going to happen. We're going to start to see creators coming and being able to upload once and reach just a variety of ecosystems. Whereas right now you have to do all the work of kind of maintaining and farming all your different ecosystems in Web 2. It's going to be a big game shift on the distribution and amount of people you can reach.
Definitely, yeah. And I mean, I'm sure our listeners can relate to that problem as well with Web 2 apps. Like for me, I post a short clip from the podcast on Instagram, then I have to go and post on LinkedIn, then I have to post on Twitter, and then Threads now.
And then Threads now.
Right,
and
now,
X.
yeah, exactly, Threads,
Yeah.
although Threads
And then the rules change on X, and you can no longer do this, but you have to do this, or you get shadow banned.
Exactly. And so, and then your identity is lost in that confusion of posting on all these apps. Not only is it lost, but it takes so much time and effort where it's exhausting. So basically with Console, if I'm correct, it connects with other ecosystems. You post once and then that post goes into these other Web3 ecosystem like Lens and Nostr. And those are also messaging social media apps. Is that correct, Chris? Maybe I'm saying that wrong.
Yeah, for sure. No, you know, this stuff's changing every few months, and there's like evolution. So I'm an educator myself, and like just so I think we're all trying to understand this, right? And like I said, it's always changing. And so that's a great question, and you know, I think the way to understand it is we are focused right now on chat as that core piece, and chat is really just a way that two or more people can exchange information, right? It's text, or it could be you send a video, and all of these ecosystems have chat as part of them. So Lens has a chat component, Nostr has a DM or a chat component, and we have one as well. We're built on Matrix. So Matrix is an open source decentralized chat protocol. And so, yeah, chat is like at the core of a lot of these ecosystems. It's not the only thing that other people focus on other parts, like like you were saying, having like a Twitter-based kind of content community or like a video-based community. But yeah, we're focused specifically on chat. Think like Telegram, think Discord, but improving that with Web3 technology.
Got it. Okay, so focus specifically on chat. Would you say that your users are primarily developers, or are they a mixture of people? And also, well, I'll ask that. I have another question lined up. So first question, who are your users? Are they developers?
Yeah, right now, I wouldn't say it's primarily developers. Right now, I would say it's people at the forefront of Web3. We have a community called Nakamoto, for example, and they have $1 million of Bitcoin that they are putting on the actual moon with a SpaceX rocket. And so it's this kind of art, like a project they're doing. And, they launched on Console because, and they described it as like, we don't do things the right way, even though it might not be like the easiest way to do something, right? And by them, they mean that like, like we're admit that like we are still building, and like our iPhone and Android app are just out now. And so, I think there's like a lot that you could go to Discord, for example, and like get all of this stuff. But we're building with our communities. And so communities come to us. Another community, Artisan, has come to us and is a collector of artists that are building on Web3. I think it's different people that just feel like working together with doing it the right way. And then like, as they grow, we grow with them. That kind of feels like the sweet spot. It's mostly a lot of artists and kind of creative projects, NFT communities, Web3 companies, these kind of things. People that have communities with communities that value what we're building in Web3 specifically.
Got it. Okay. So the question that I have lined up now is how, what are your thoughts on attracting the mainstream to Console and other Web3 focused apps? Because right now, and I think you mentioned, do you have to have an NFT to use the app? For instance, I mean, how are we going to attract people like my mom, for instance, to use the app?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, to answer that question with the NFT, anyone can join. You just need a Web3 wallet at this point. So you need like MetaMask or Ledger or Hero Wallet, and you could just. And we take you through that process if it's your first time. I'll personally help you, but we have instructions and a team to support that, because I do recognize that is tough for people that aren't in the space. And also the onboarding is something we're looking to improve. I think in the next year or two, there's going to be huge unlocks in that. I think it's interesting what Magic Link is doing with email address, non-custodial wallets, and even the Ethereum Vitalik crew is like, there's a lot of leaps and bounds and like how to make onboarding easier. So that's the hardest part. But once you get on, no, you don't need an NFT. You can use whatever you want. We'll just assign you basically a character, an avatar. But if you want to customize it, it has to be an NFT. But to your bigger question of how do we bring this to your mom, to my mom, all of that, I want to say that that's not the challenge that we're thinking of like for the next year or so. I think the next year or so, we're really focused on people who are already in Web3 and live these values and are building on these values, and really just kind of building that core community. The question of like how we bring Web3 to, the other whatever, like 7 or so billion people in the world, that is really important. I don't want to pretend that like we're taking that on ourselves. I think that's about this space really needs to find I was like find, because sometimes it feels like we're searching lately, but find problems that are real problems that we can solve. The entire, I think, spark of, because remember, like Web3 kind of started as like cryptocurrency, right? And cryptocurrency was really a reaction to let's improve the financial system, right? There was a clear problem, which is whether it's inflation, the banking crisis of 2008. There was a lot of problems where centralization in the ecosystem of finances had a lot of problems. And I think that's really what funded most of this movement. Web3 now is, I see Web3 as kind of like the son or daughter of that movement, where now it's like, how do we then bring that to other parts of the world? How do we bring it to fashion? How do we bring it to creators? How do we bring it to social media? And that part, I don't know that we've cracked like how we communicate that to the value to a lot of people. A lot of people are just happy on Facebook. A lot of people are just happy on Instagram. And I do think it's a challenge, but I think there's a lot of really cool exciting innovation that is being led by the creative culture. And I think that like any kind of exodus from Facebook, as we've seen, or to different platforms in the past, I think that those, I think as the creative community comes behind it, which is what's happening, I think we'll see more of momentum to go where the exciting content is and the exciting communities are.
Definitely. And I think a lot of it has to do with just data ownership and owning your information. And because, right now, Facebook, Instagram, X, formerly Twitter, all of that information is being used for those platforms for their needs and not for the creators' needs. And I think when people start realizing that their data is being abused, then they'll probably want to start looking into these Web3 apps.
Yeah, I just had one quick thing to kind of on that is like in around 2018, 2029, there was this movement where a lot of people, millions of people were like, let's leave Facebook, let's leave Twitter. And there was just nowhere to go at that time. People went to Mastodon. They were like, nah, this isn't the thing. But now there's options, and so you're totally right. And I think people will feel that. Sometimes it just takes an event, like we've seen many events in the past 10 years. I think it just takes a kind of awakening event where people go, yeah, no, I'm ready to not deal with this anymore.
Definitely. And I think, with Threads coming into the picture, I really liked Threads at first, but I don't like it anymore. I don't,
Why not?
I don't know. It's like, what's the point? Why do we need another app that's just like X, right? Or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. Why do we need another one of these apps? Like, we need something different. Data ownership, for instance, the Web3 apps. So I think, once people realize that Threads and all these other new apps aren't enough, then we'll start seeing real traction. So those are my thoughts on it.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Chris, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk a little bit about more about your background. So you mentioned you're an educator, and I forgot to introduce you in the beginning. I forgot to mention that you teach at Columbia Business School, which is extremely impressive. What do you teach at Columbia Business School?
I teach a course at Columbia Business School. It's called Digital Literacy. So it's like kind of a funny title because it means it's vague. It's quite vague, I think. We I guess created the course about 7 years ago now because a lot of students coming out of their MBA or in their second year of their MBA program, they were excited to get into tech. They were excited to work at big tech, whether it was Amazon or Uber. They were excited to have startups, to like create. There was a lot of momentum for this, but business schools around that time didn't have the curriculum or the staff to really know how to do that. My last company, 1 month, we were an online education company, and previously before that I was at General Assembly, which became a pretty big education company. And so, I had the luck of just getting to speak with the dean of the business school around that time. And me and my co-founder of 1 month at the time, we just kind of tried to reimagine what it would be like if you were getting your MBA, now, and what it would take to take you from the traditional world of, learning finance, learning like, prisoner's dilemma strategy, like all of these kind of like textbook MBA curriculum that you learn, and then bridging that to also get people ready to apply for these jobs or to start startups. And so that's where digital literacy came from. It's a course that really I created the curriculum, and it's I like stories, and so I think stories stick with people. And I'm actually working on a book now that's based on the course, and it starts with like the history of the internet actually in the first lecture, because I think understanding the people behind all of these technologies helps you remember the technology. And so, we talk about how the internet was started as this way to decentralize communications in the Cold War, which is a fascinating story. And then how that led to the rise of the World Wide Web, how that led to Google, like how this government-funded project kind of spun out all of these companies, all of these resources, and then also what went wrong with that, right? And, through that journey, you can understand, not only the stories and the history, but the solutions. Because every programming language, every database, every company generally is like in reaction to a problem of the time. And I think through that history, you can come to see, why these tools were used and then what their weaknesses are. And that really leads us to the last third of the semester, which is all about Web3 and blockchain, because I think to understand where we came from and the problems with our current system is the full context for why we need Web3 today. And that's what this is about. Yeah.
Got it. That's exciting. Is it an in-person course or is this all online? Because I want to sit in on one of your lectures.
It's in person
Okay.
Here in New York City. Yeah.
So I have to come to New York. That's fine.
Yeah.
It sounds really interesting. I'm just curious, Chris, what comes after the Web3 lectures? What's next? Are you talking about AI?
Yeah, AI has been part of the curriculum. It's there's so much now with AI that it has. I mean, when I started, this was the only course in 2016 that we were discussing these things, and we had some great speakers. Like Joe Lubin came once, and we had people from the Bitcoin community, and I feel like it was easy to access, these people, and these conversations were so new. But there's been a lot of advancements at Columbia Business School. I can speak to their curriculum. Now there's a full AI course. Now there's full blockchain courses. Now, you know what I mean? So a lot has changed, and I think it's really cool to see the evolution, and it's cool to imagine. It's always hard to predict the future or try to imagine the future, but I think this stuff we're talking about here on your podcast, I mean, this is how it started back then. It was just we were having conversations, we were imagining the future, fast forward 5 years, and there's a whole ecosystem and economy built around, Web3 now. And I think the next 5 years are going to be super interesting. And I hope that business schools and other educators follow suit.
Yeah, no, I think you said something very important that I just want to point out again. So you mentioned Columbia Business School. All of this was kind of new in 2016, but now there are AI courses, there are blockchain courses. And that's really important because it just goes to show that this technology is here to stay. And even if we don't see the mainstream today using apps like Console, for instance, people are in these Ivy League schools / just universities in general where they're learning about Web3 and blockchain. And that's great because these are the baby steps that we need in order to get people to leverage Web3 technology.
Oh, for sure. I mean, education that's why I'm excited about the education component, because, as a developer myself for many years, you can build some really cool stuff and nobody will see it if they don't know about it, if they don't know what it is. And I think that's cool. Like the cool thing about what you're providing here with the community you're building and your messaging is making clear ways to get people excited, to feel like they can ask questions, and to learn from the people who are leading this and building this. And, it's just so important. And I don't think the tech could do without the education and the storytelling that goes to share that with people.
Definitely. I mean, I think it's interesting because when I tell people what I do, I'm a journalist for Cointelegraph. I have this podcast on Web3, and people get kind of intimidated. They're like, oh, I don't know anything about blockchain, and I don't know anything about cryptocurrency. And, but it's important to educate the world because the technology isn't going anywhere, and it shouldn't be intimidating. It's like, let's ask questions. Let's not feel embarrassed. And I'm sure in your Columbia Business School course, you take questions that might seem silly to someone, but in reality, it's this is all new to everybody.
100%.
Yeah. Chris, so that leads me to my other point I also want our listeners to know. So you are also a Forbes contributing writer. And I was once a Forbes contributing writer before coming to Cointelegraph.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, and you cover blockchain and Web3. Is that true or?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how to say this. I don't need to like say good things about Forbes like necessarily, but I think they're doing a kick-ass job of really like bringing together a powerhouse of crypto reporters. So I was, asked and interviewed by Lee Quen, who is a powerhouse. She started Day Femmes, which is this, I'll probably butcher explaining what it is, but it's like a DIY physical magazine for, I think, mostly women, and has like cuts intersections of creativity and Bitcoin. And it's like the Wired magazine of the 90s, but now for like the smart cutting edge women in the world. That's how I would see it. And they were able to hire her. And so then she kind of just brought like a whole cadre of like, Bitcoiners, like Polygon, Ethereum people building. And yeah, it's been great. We have our Telegram chat. We even had a meetup of all the New Yorkers. There's a Bitcoin bar I think it's called Key Pub in the Village now. And so we've all met there. Yeah, it's a cool place actually.
Wow.
It sounded a little bit like, what is that? But it's a really cozy place, and some very intellectual, interesting people show up.
That is cool. I mean, we need something like that in Austin for sure.
There is.
Oh, there is. Okay.
It's not a bar. It's a co-working space.
Okay.
I'd have to find the name. It's on East 6th Street. Yeah.
Okay. East 6th Street. Always a fun time.
Yeah.
AKA
it's not a
dirty
and it's not a
sixes.
bar, but
not a bar.
But it's a co-working space. But yeah, so it's been great to work with Forbes. I've written a handful of articles this year, and yeah, it's been an exciting position to work on.
Cool. Yeah, no, Forbes is very exciting. I worked with Michael Del Castillo when I was there, and he taught me so much. I admire him. So Michael, if you're listening, thank you for everything that you've done.
I love that.
Yeah. So Chris, before I do these podcasts, sometimes I go on X, formerly Twitter, as I've been saying. And I ask people if they have any questions for the people that I'll be interviewing. So someone did actually come back with a question. I think it was on my Instagram or Console's Instagram. I think the question was, how does Console plan to get users moving forward? I mean, you said there's like 2,000 users as of today, or?
It's about like 3,500 right now.
Okay, 3,500. Yeah, I was way off. So how do you plan, how do you plan to kind of get users to come in and use the app as you move forward?
Yeah, so the way that we're rolling out Console is on a community by community basis. Since launching our prototype about 8 months ago, we have had communities apply. So, if you're a community out there, and a community could just be, you and a few friends, or it could be somebody who's an NFT community. It could be you have a Telegram or a Discord community, just like a group of friends, that want to come. We've been doing it on a group by group basis, and mostly the reason we've had people apply is just so that we could give everyone the attention that we think they deserve, because we want to learn and build with our communities. So, we've had this one community come, if you're into Bitcoin, there's this community that came to us with an idea, and they said, because at Console you can token gate, right? We can read your wallet. And so we could just use that data to create networks of people. And this community is inspired by Balaji, who wrote the network state, and I think actually fairly involved with his network. And this community came because they wanted to create a place where full coiners, basically somebody who owns at least one full Bitcoin, could come and discuss the future of the Bitcoin economy and building on Bitcoin. And the reason they wanted to do that was because now there's a lot of spam and scams and all this stuff when you try to have those conversations in the open, whether you have them on Reddit or in Telegram. You never know who people are, right? Do you have skin in the game, or are you just kind of shilling, right? And, our ability to work with them, we actually put, quite a bit of resources into understanding their problem and actually built some technology specifically for them to grow their community. And it's been really cool. So if anybody wants to it's an invite only at this point, but I can hit me up on Twitter and I can help you guys out. But yeah, to your question about, I think, growing and bringing people in, we've just been going community by community because we're looking for interesting problems that we can help solve and then scale those and bring those to other communities. And there's enough communities on Discord alone that are just email. I mean, we've had about at least 4,000 people apply to just be on Console. So we have a long list, and, I've talked with not all of those, but a lot of them, either through email or in calls. And eventually pretty soon we'll open it up where anyone can create communities. But the first few hundred communities, we've just really wanted to give a lot of attention to. And I think, I don't know, my inbox is full every day with people trying to get on. So I feel pretty good. I feel like it's working.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's exciting. Also, you said a term that I've never heard in my life before, full coiner. I didn't know you call people with at least one full Bitcoin a full coiner.
A full coiner, yeah.
That's really interesting. I always learn something new, especially with terminology during these podcasts. So that's the thing that I've learned, full coiner.
It's cute,
I
right?
like that. And another thing, Chris, that I wanted to say based on what you were just saying, I think it would be really cool to have a Web3 deep dive community on Console. I mean, that's just, resonates with me as a great use case. So if you want to talk about that after this episode or, later on in the week, we should totally do that because it seems like something that would be right up my alley.
I would love that. And I think it's this is the kind of collaboration I think of, like, understanding all these things that your users and your community and maybe even guests want in this space. It's like, we have a partner, then we can co-create together. I think that's the real opportunity of working on a platform with these technologies, that they're like Web3 is like little Legos that we can kind of plug things together and make things. So yeah, I would love to chat more with you about that and make a Web3 deep dive community. I love that idea.
Yeah, I love it also. That's really cool. So Chris, we're going to wrap things up a bit. Are there any final thoughts that you want to add that I haven't already asked you about? Maybe what's next, or, what you're going to be teaching at Columbia Business School this year, anything like that? What you'll be writing about for Forbes?
Yeah, I feel like we covered a good amount of that. I mean, I'm always excited for people coming to the space, and especially people that want to build or, I think there's a lot of opportunity here. And I guess I would just say, be curious, be kind, and, reach out to me if I can help guide you in the right direction. But I think, this is a space that is going to keep growing. And I think, a thing that comes up a lot in my classes is this move to AI. And there's a bit of a question of AI is getting a lot of attention now. What we're going to see is that AI and crypto, or Web3, whatever we want to call it, AI and Web3, they're going to play this role of really helping kind of balance and regulate each other. Whereas when AI brings us to having so much data about our personal lives, I think we're day one of putting personal information on the web and we don't even know it. But when we start putting more information about how we, vote, about our DNA, about our health records, right? We're going to need ways to also verify that data is true and trusted, and that it's linked to the identity of the person who is doing it. And that source of truth will be what Web3 provides as a counterbalance to AI, where in AI, there's unlimited ways to deepfake and, falsified narratives. So I think anyone that's excited about this space or even on the fence about it, I would just encourage you to learn more, listen to Rachel's podcast, ask me questions, because I think the more people that we can educate and get excited to see the potential, I think there's career opportunities that are outnumbered. There's amazing opportunities. And I think there's amazing opportunities for the space to have people like you that probably can contribute something. So yeah, I just want to encourage people to step in if you're on the fence. And yeah, I'm available to chat at my DMs if you want to hit me up.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I second everything you just said. If people want to get in touch with you, what's your, what are your handles? How do they do that? What's your email? I don't know. What's the best way?
Sure. I mean, I am on Twitter. It's at Castig, so Castig. And on Console, we don't have handles. I just use my ENS name. So I'm Castig.eth. So you could just find me, but I'm also Castig.eth on, a dozen other sites. And that's the cool thing about Web3. So if you see Castig.eth or if I'm on a site, you could reach out to me there as well. And of course, Console.xyz is our site. So if you need to find Console, that's where you could go.
Awesome. Final question. I should have asked this at the beginning. Castig, that's kind of a shortened version of your last name. How do you pronounce your full last name?
Well, if you were in Italy, so my family is Italian, it would be, I'm going to try my best. It would be Castiglione, like Castiglione.
Wow. Okay. Awesome.
But when my dad was growing up, he didn't like the sound. He didn't want to sound so Italian because it wasn't cool. So he says Castiglione. He just made that up. And then we've been doing, and I didn't find that out till recently that I'm like, that's not really how you say it. And he's like, no, I just didn't want to sound like the old Italian people. So Castiglione is what I say, but it's just because my dad says that.
Got it. Okay. Interesting tidbit to leave our listeners with.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Chris, thanks again for joining the podcast, and I look forward to staying in touch. And thank you again to the listeners for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Special thanks to Aaron Bender for producing Web3 Deep Dive podcast. I'd also like to thank the sponsors behind Web3 Deep Dive. Finally, thanks to the listeners for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and share. I'll see you guys next time.